During World War I and World War II, India, then under British colonial rule, saw its resources, manpower, and economic capacity exploited to support the British war efforts. Despite widespread grievances against British exploitation, India did not experience full-scale rebellions against the British government during these wars. A mix of political, social, and economic factors combined with strategic British policies played into this unique historical outcome. 1. Political compromise and the promise of reforms. Both world wars were times of intense nationalist fervor in India. During World War I, the Indian National Congress and other nationalist groups demanded political concessions from the British in exchange for support for the war effort. The British responded by promising self-governing institutions and, after the war, introduced limited reforms under the Government of India Act of 1919. This act, however inadequate, established a sense of gradual political change, temporarily alleviating the call for outright rebellion. During World War II, the British also attempted to negotiate with Indian leaders. In 1942, Britain sent the Cripps mission to India, offering greater political autonomy after the war. Although the Congress leaders rejected this proposal, the British still managed to create divisions within India's political landscape, particularly between Congress and the Muslim League, by playing into the differing aspirations of these groups. This divided response to British rule during wartime undermined the cohesion needed for a full rebellion. 2. The divide and rule strategy. The British effectively employed a divide and rule strategy that amplified the religious and regional divisions within Indian society. Throughout the colonial period, British administrators promoted divisions along religious, linguistic, and regional lines, a tactic that became especially critical during wartime. These divisions weakened the unity needed for a successful rebellion, as groups often saw each other as rivals rather than allies against a common colonial power. The rivalry between the Indian National Congress, which largely represented Hindu interests, and the Muslim League, which voiced concerns for Muslims, was particularly divisive. The Muslim League's demand for a separate Muslim state, what would eventually become Pakistan, further fragmented any united anti-British movement during World War II. 3. Economic constraints and strategic British investment. The British economic policies left India in a vulnerable financial state, with limited resources to fuel a rebellion. The British Raj controlled India's infrastructure and agricultural production, and they directed much of India's industrial output towards the war effort. In exchange, the British managed to provide just enough economic relief and incentives to Indian elites and business owners to secure their loyalty or, at the very least, their neutrality. This compromised the ability of India's working class to rally against the British. 4. The role of Indian soldiers and the military. India contributed millions of soldiers to the British Army during both world wars. Many of these soldiers, often recruited from rural areas, were loyal to the British Crown due to promises of pay, pensions, and social prestige. Additionally, the British established strong military control over India's internal regions, suppressing any uprising attempts before they could gain momentum. While some Indian soldiers did defect and join the Indian National Army, (INA), led by Subhas Chandra Bose during World War II, the majority of Indian soldiers remained under British command. 5. Social pressures and the influence of Mahatma Gandhi. The presence of Mahatma Gandhi and the nonviolent ideology he promoted was a crucial factor that shaped India's wartime response. Gandhi's advocacy for nonviolent resistance made him the moral center of the Indian independence movement, inspiring many Indians to avoid violence and open rebellion, even in times of heightened oppression. Gandhi, along with the Congress, often prioritized peaceful negotiation over violent rebellion, reducing the likelihood of an armed uprising against the British during these wars. India's lack of rebellion during World War I and II was due to a complex mix of political promises, social divisions, economic exploitation, and strategic British policies. These factors, combined with the influence of Indian leaders like Gandhi, shaped India's unique wartime response. Rather than open rebellion, India's struggle for independence took on a slower but ultimately successful path through negotiation, nonviolent resistance, and strategic political maneuvering. By the end of World War II, however, India was primed for independence, setting the stage for the end of British colonial rule in 1947.